It's just a different way to approach it. And I think it has completely changed what our relationship feels like. Yeah. We can overcome fights or hard places because we know we have a secure bond, and we have a secure bond because we let each other into these places.
Connecting couples with the real Imhoffs.
Hi, I'm Angela Imhoff.
And I'm Chad Imhoff, and we're in our series, The Beginning, and we're talking a little bit about how all this stuff downloads and how we kind of start to understand it and how we change and grow as we move through these processes. Last week, we got to talk a little bit about how withdrawers work, or how I work, and we're sharing our stories, our personal journeys with you this time. So this time, we get to talk a little bit about how Angela works, how pursuers work, and kind of their inner workings, and how some of this really, how she saw it, how it kind of landed on her, and then, you know, how it's kind of changed her. And so we're going to dive into that pretty quickly and just give her some space. And so Angela, I'll jump in. I mean, you know, how did you really first see EFT, and how did you really kind of, or I say this process, right? And how did you start to really kind of like incorporate that with your own kind of way of being and work on it?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I feel like we talked about in the first episode of this little segment that we're doing, a little extra going back to the beginning, that we were at that training, and it just kind of hit me that maybe I had missed something growing up. Yeah. And it was really hard because I think that we will do a whole series on family of origin. We talked a little bit about family rules in our holiday series. But for me, I had in our master's program taken this family of origin class and kind of started to recognize some of the patterns that I learned growing up. Yeah. My mom and dad both work really hard. They don't really, if you would ask them, I think if I had a conversation with them about emotion, my dad cries when he talks, especially about Jesus. He has such a big heart, and, you know, he'll tear up. And obviously my mom, if, you know, usually around grief or loss, will tear up. And so our picture of emotion was, can you cry? You know, in a movie scene, if something happens, you cry. Therefore, you can do emotion. That is really what my perspective of it was going into that training. What I realized at that training was, wait a minute, these emotions are actually signaling me to do something, and I actually do something. And at the time, I think I was in my mid-30s when we first learned it. And I was like, so I'm 30 years
mid to late.
Hey, I'm not kicking. So I was 30 something years into strategies that I couldn't articulate, emotions that I was unaware of. I didn't know how shame landed in my body. I didn't understand when I was angry what my body was really telling me to fight for something that feels unfair. Or there were just this awareness of, wait a minute, did everyone else in this room, this is kind of how I thought about it first, did everybody else in this room get taught something that I didn't get taught? Yeah.
Well, and you're bringing up such a good point. You're saying, you know what, my whole life taught me for 30 something years to do it one way. And so now I started to see this other thing. And it really is almost disorienting.
It was triggering for me.
Yeah.
It really kind of paralyzed me, where I couldn't even really continue learning a cognitive therapy that I was going to go sit in a session with someone and help them navigate, when I didn't feel like I had ever been there or done the work myself. Now, I'm not somebody that believes you have to have done everything your clients do to really have empathy for them. No, I feel like I can have empathy for people's stories, and I do incorporate my story into how I work with couples and how I work with individuals. But in this particular case, I knew that my inability to access my own emotion was preventing me from staying with somebody in their grief, staying with somebody in their sadness, validating the very good reasons that somebody does anger. In my mind, I was kind of always taught to control your anger, go to your room and pull yourself together. Then you kind of come back and socialize with people when you're not so angry. So there were these messages that I felt natural in even a therapeutic session or a life coaching session to say, here's how you aren't so angry, or here's how you,
yeah,
whatever. And so here I am kind of going, how come I didn't learn this? And so I made my first big error in this process, which there were a few in my journey, which was I went back to my family of origin and I was like,
go line them out, man.
Hey, Mom and Dad, did you know that emotions are important and we don't do them well? That didn't go very well for me.
So when Angela was saying that angry was something that you went and took care of on your own, she doesn't mean confrontation, just to be clear. Like, you can confront in your family really directly, and that's what you just said you did. You went back and said, hey, did you guys know this? Why didn't we do this?
In my family of origin, do talk directly about stuff. I mean, we go toe-to-toe on a lot of issues. So it's not like we avoid issues. Yeah. But really, there wasn't an understanding of emotion or even permission to feel negative emotion. My faith journey really was, and it was a great strategy for my dad, for my mom, for some of the stuff they came out of, which was choose joy. Yeah. Be happy. Be grateful for where you're at. And that strategy does work sometimes. But for me, I had been through a divorce. I had come back from making really poor choices in my life and really had to go, wait a minute. I'm missing a piece, and the missing piece is actually why I have had why my marriage didn't work, why I've had some moral failure, why I've made some poor choices, why I had to kind of rebuild. And so it wasn't at that moment. We heard in the last episode, your journey was a little bit more career driven, like I am learning a theory to be a better therapist. You have absolutely applied it in your person and in your marriage. But for me, it was like, I can no longer pursue
the rest of this until I figure this out.
The career part, I've got to apply this for myself. And that's just us being different learners. I am a kind of want to know and understand it through my own lens so that I can apply it. So I kind of got back into therapy and was like, I think I'm really broken. I think there's something that's really missing. And I really started to continue on. Like, I went to the next round of trainings, but with a different approach. I actually was like slowly taking notes and applying, pretending I was the client in this chair going, this is what I'm learning and I'm understanding and I'm validating myself in these places where I never kind of have been validated before. Also, very similar to Chad, I didn't understand the importance of taking my pain to somebody else. In his mind, it was, and he shared this in the last episode, I don't want to share my weakness because I don't think you're going to love me there. Yeah. For me, it was kind of like, it feels chaotic and probably too much, and I need to keep all of this big emotion tucked in. Maybe a little bit similar, but for me, it was always like mature and stable means not emotional. Yeah. And if I wasn't, go ahead. Yeah, you made a face.
I just thought about something. I'm like, so I see emotions so differently than you. Yeah. Like,
we really both do.
Mature and stable. And so what you're saying is you started to see it as the way you stay mature and stable. And I want to ask, I don't know, is you kind of, you try to get on top of it. You use words and you use content or story or
take control of the situation because if I'm getting emotionally out of control, it's really bad.
That activity. And I see that controlling, I see that as emotion. Yeah. So that's a very different thing for us.
It was how you controlled the emotion.
Yeah. No, well, then that's
and that was the thing I was learning, though, was that underneath that structure and that
underneath that control, or underneath that
I was
energy,
really being run by emotions that I had no idea.
You didn't have any words for. So you kind of could use your anxious energy, or emotion.
Well, this is something that
it's cool. I'm just thinking about.
I work a lot with individuals in this too, where I want to try to help. We'll work with couples. Chad will work with one side, I'll work with the other, or I'll work with the wife, or work with the individual, and say, can you connect the behaviors you're doing back to the emotion that cued it? We talked about this before in our series on a fight. We talked about there's this trigger and you see something and it sends a message to your brain, and then your brain applies a meaning, and then your body has a natural response to whatever that meaning was. There's a behavioral response attached to an emotional warning sign or message that your body is sending you. And so kind of learning and understanding that appraisal theory is what it's called. But understanding that was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that I'm not just arbitrarily going through these behaviors or going through these motions, but underneath something motivated it. So I went backwards in my own journey, and it's a kind of, when I do life coaching, it's what I coach people on. Go backwards and say, now can you tell me when you're feeling insecure? Let's go there. Let's go to a place of insecurity. What do you do? What are the things that get you not feeling insecure anymore? And at the time in my unhealth, it was everything from try to get attention to buy comfortable jeans that fit me, that make me feel good about myself, or whatever. There were some people will drink or do bad things or do good things, or, like if you're an extrovert, hang out with people, that makes you feel better, or reach out and get validation from people, or anything, whatever it is. Can you say, when I'm feeling insecure, these are my tendencies? And then I went kind of down this list of, when I'm feeling angry, what are my tendencies? When I have a shame trigger, I'm feeling inadequate or not enough, what are my triggers? When I'm feeling sad, what is my tendency to do? In my family of origin, we didn't do sad publicly. We did sad very privately. Yeah. And so knowing that Chad and I are kind of public people, where I'm in ministry, we teach, we obviously in our workshops and in this podcast, we share a lot of our own story. And this is something we kind of had to, or I kind of had to grapple with this. This means I have to do sad in front of other people. We have a journey when we got married and wanted to have kids, and we're having infertility issues and couldn't get pregnant, and then did and had 2 miscarriages. I remember after the first one, it was so hard for me to let people see my sadness, because I felt like I had to respond to their sadness for me. It was this weird, that the second miscarriage we had, I didn't want to tell anybody. And I remember thinking, and then we got pregnant with Avery, our beautiful miracle. And I thought, I don't want to share that we're pregnant, because if it doesn't go well, I'm going to have to let other people experience my sadness. And I can't do that. That is not what my body is telling me is safe to do. And I had to go, wait a minute.
For you, it's a lot of work to hold that back.
Oh my gosh, it is a lot of work. Yeah. Well, I want to say it's more work to hold back the bigger emotions when I think that I've got it under control and I'm blaming someone else for it. Yeah. Like in our cycle, if I think you're doing something and you're the reason that I'm distressed, don't have a problem telling you that. And now that I've learned that doesn't land well, I have to hold that back and hope for the best. It's not as hard for me to hold back my sadness. I don't actually want to share that, because then you're going to want to respond. And there's always been for me this idea that, if you're going to try to comfort me, then I have to feel comfort. Like
you have to do something.
I have to.
You'll have to let me in.
Expectation of how I'm now supposed to feel. Or so it's very similar to in our last episode. You're like, it feels 2% easier. I love. I'm going to quote Chad in that.
Would you want to get 2% better? Try this.
Yes, for sure.
Really hard thing.
Well, so for me, it's like, kind of the same on your end. We're like, okay, well, how has the change happened? So for me, as I started to kind of acknowledge that there were strategies or behaviors that my body just kind of went to when I felt these things, that's where, for me, I want to say, and this is my faith story, is that's where I kind of let God into those spaces and said, God, this is what my strategy has been, or this is what I just kind of go to because I think it works, but it has not been working. What can I do differently? And not only was it like letting God into those spaces and recognizing that I have value in those spaces, but now at that point, you're in my life, you're on this journey, and I know the importance of letting your partner in. So it was kind of including you into those spaces. And you did a great job. I feel like I have a very engaged withdrawer from the beginning of us learning this. And how blessed are we that it was like year 1.5 that we got all this information downloaded and didn't have this long marriage. I hear so many people have a long marriage story and are learning it and have to kind of go back and repair things that they just didn't know. They didn't have the content.
So for you, I'm not trying to cut you off, but but for you, it really landed like oh my gosh, I've got to
I have got to do some work around
not just our relationship, but you're saying
like
personal work in every relationship. Cause you're talking about like, and maybe we didn't set it up, but like church staff knew about the miscarriages.
Yep.
You had family, you're pretty public on Facebook.
Yep.
Like, and we're not saying that everybody out there needs to be as public with their stuff as maybe Angela was, or I was, but I'm like, you're saying that this was like, it really kind of wrecked you when you started to go into this. And
it's interesting too, because my father was a professional football player and a huge coach, and is in the Hall of Fame and at LSU, and actually a lot of Hall of Fames. And so he was a public figure.
Yeah.
But it was very, and I don't want to discredit the importance of this, because I do recognize that public figures have a responsibility to the influence that they have on others. But my dad and my family of origin, the rule was kind of always show your best. The messy stuff needs to not be shared.
Tuck that in, kind of.
Kind of keep that private or keep that back. Always just be happy, joyful, grateful, positive, encouraging, good emotions. And so that good, bad, or otherwise, that is kind of what it was like for me, even in my roles as being a leader, a ministry leader, somebody who's a speaker. It was the good stuff is okay to share with others, but nobody really wants to kind of swim in that negative emotion. You don't want to, even in some of my, I've been a manager, I've been a leader in most of my jobs.
Yeah.
I kind of go to this training position. And so we're taught, whether it's through human resources or through trainings or whatever, that you don't want to, the quote is like, bleed on your team. You want to take your stuff either lateral or up. And I didn't really have lateral or up. It wasn't
in most of your world.
Yeah, it wasn't something. A lot of times I was the leader, and I didn't know who to. If I was sad, that was just going to get in the way of my ability to do a good job. So I definitely wasn't going to share that. And I feel like that's a sad thing that happens in ministry. Is you'll see pastors or people who are in burnout, or even in the therapeutic setting in burnout, to go, man, I'm in a hard place, but if I share this, it could jeopardize how people see my ability to do my job. So I better lock this down. And that was devastating in my life. And I had to come to terms with that. How I landed in a divorce when that is not something I, am proud of, or even at the time would say didn't believe in it. And yet here I am, a divorcee.
So sitting here today, I'm going to change this.
Yeah.
Sitting here today, how have you changed? How has this changed you?
Golly.
You're kind of talking about it, so I'm just going to make it over. Like, what has it done to you?
It completely shifted my paradigm. Yeah. I mean, now most of the things, I'll teach classes on your emotional identity and how important emotion. I mean, I read the books about the importance of emotional health and how to apply emotion in your spiritual walk. It's so valuable for me. It has not only shifted who I am as a person, what I am, my little daughter, what I want her to learn and understand about her emotions. But in our relationship, it doesn't mean that I can stop our cycle or even stop myself always from getting frustrated at you or bringing out some of those kind of pursuer strategies that are really ingrained. But I do feel like we're quick to repair. I am quick to go, I don't like what happened to me just then, and I want to come back to it. I do let you into some of those sad and hard places, and it's been safe. I have an engage withdrawer who wants to meet me in those spaces and tell me I'm not too much, and those sides of me are valuable and beautiful too. And so that has been a huge blessing for me. And I have a community that I'm vulnerable with, and I'm kind of walking them through this same space. So it has completely changed me. Yeah.
It's been a huge paradigm shift. So what a cool thing, man. And I don't want to cut us off by any means.
It lends itself to kind of our connect point on this side. And we talked in the last one, this idea that if you're kind of in this cognitively and going, okay, this is, it's important to stay engaged, or it's important to kind of think about where we are, then I'm just going to do the thing. And for me, it was like, I have to change from almost like at my core level at a different, it wasn't in my brain, it was in my gut. It was a felt sense more than it was a cognitive place. And so I think for me, that is the big shift, and we kind of want to pitch to you, the connect point is where are you with this if you are not the cognitive person? And maybe there a couple out there.
If you're not the withdrawer, if you're not a cognitive withdrawer, if you're more of maybe the anxious, kind of what you said, it really was a good way to say it. Like you expressed a lot of anxious energy, and that felt really safe for you. If you're the person who really expresses that way, how is this
different for you?
Different.
Yeah.
How are you taking this? And how is your body experiencing this? And what is it like? I mean, like Angela said, what is it like to think that there might be something below that or underneath that needs to be expressed and hasn't?
Hearing for me that there were these underlying emotions that were kind of driving my behaviors was mind-blowing. Hearing for me that I contributed to the distress in our relationship when I was pretty sure it was Chad's fault, or pretty sure it was my ex-husband's fault, and that's why my marriage failed. Recognizing that I, the pursuer, or I, this person who had this emotion that was kind of controlling me, if I want to use those words, and I didn't know it, getting in tune with what was happening there and recognizing that I actually can do something different, respond to my emotions differently, bring something else forward instead of just telling him what to do or coaching him or people.
Can I tell you something? I think me being more engaged on this side has helped you, but I'm like, I think it helps me more than 2% to kind of like have you do some things different. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, it's interesting because I think my engagement helps you a lot.
Yeah.
But I think your kind of different approach helps me a lot.
Yay.
And so that's a good, I mean, maybe, 2%, I was sitting over here thinking is 2%. I'm like,
we're going with
I'm like, but 2% over time.
Yeah.
And if you multiply that out and you take years and moments and days even, and it over time you get 2%, it adds up pretty quick.
For me to kind of start to see what it was like to be on the other side of my frustration or criticism or anger, I started to realize, man, I feel bad for him for being on the other side when I'm not in the best place. And so that made me want to shift a little bit of who I was and say, hey, I don't want to be mad at you and I don't want to be critical to you, but there's something happening for me and I want to let you in on it. I'm frustrated and here's why. It's just a different way to approach it. And I think it has completely changed what our relationship feels like. Yeah. We can overcome fights or hard places because we know we have a secure bond, and we have a secure bond because we let each other into these places. And that's what we hope for you as well.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Ange. Y'all, the best thing you can do if you enjoy this, if you like this, is really go on and rate us or give us a subscription or like us, thumbs up us, download us, share us with friends, tell people about us. We've been getting great feedback and we're so appreciative of that. I'll read one real quick, but listening to this podcast has helped our marriage. Chad and Angela teach us about intricate parts of our relationship and each partner's role in it. That has been enlightening, and to us as spouses, we have learned to put words to our feelings and to understand our cycle better. We are on a path to healing and strengthening our marriage, and this podcast has given us direction and clarity in navigating that. So if you have some feedback for us,
encouraging. That's exactly what our hope is.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving us that review. It's really important to us.
So nice. And if you have feedback for us, we'd love to get it, and we'd love to maybe even share it. So thanks so much. Thanks for checking us out. Angela, thank you for sharing your story with us and your side of it.
Thank you earlier too for sharing yours. We appreciate it. Come back with us for one more episode in this where we talk about where we want to take this podcast in this next year and what we hope for you.
Thanks.